Welcome to the Mike Abadir Show. You'll want to sit tight this hour as hosts Mike Abadir and co-host Gino Bacola talk to the experts, celebrities, and figures from the worlds of sports and business of sports. We cover the NFL, baseball, basketball, soccer, and horse racing, so we have all of the bases covered. Now, we just need your participation. Here is your host, Mike Abadir.
Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, March 8th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and we have 1 week before we have our Vegas live road show. Gino and I are super excited. We're going to be at Treasure Island.
Next week right now. Yep. We'll be there firing
1
away.
Week from today.
And there'll already have been 3 or 4 games underway. I got to be honest, Mike. I think that next Thursday is probably my favorite day of the year, at least for me. This was a day I would always stay home from school when I was in high school, or even younger, to be honest. Probably from about 10 on, I would just not go to school that day, and my parents just were kind of okay with it because they knew how much I love March Madness. And what was lucky is that at this part of the year, because I played soccer. So at this part of the year in high school, there weren't any soccer games or practices or anything going on. So I couldn't stay home all day if I had a game or if I had practice, But since there's nothing going on, stay home all day. You sit down. This is when you got a couple mimosas in the morning because there's never really a day, maybe opening day of baseball, when you have things going all throughout the day during the week on Thursday and on Friday. We're going to get 16 games next Thursday, 16 games next Friday. I mean, there's more going on right now, and there's still a lot of big, really important happenings that we're going to talk to Keeneland and Dan about in a little bit. So many bubble teams that played yesterday that are playing right now. I know Louisville just lost. They got beat up by Virginia. They were on the bubble, but they won yesterday. So a win yesterday and then a loss to the number 1 overall seed Virginia. Does that bring you in, or are you still on the outside of the bubble looking in? This is when things get fun over the next week or so, Mikey.
Absolutely. And you're getting very specific there with the teams that are on the bubble that could make it. But let's take a step back and talk generalities for a minute. Is the college basketball tourney the best championship tournament setup of any pro or college sport?
Yeah. Best is probably... most exciting is definitely the best way to put it. Best, I'm not sure, because when you look at sports, is sporting events the best when you get maybe unpredictable results or craziness, or you get that's why you have to play the game, or is it best when the best teams win? For example, in the NBA, we really never see upsets in playoffs. In a series. In baseball, you see it a little bit, but in a lot of the sports that you have series, you really don't see upsets very often. You'll see it in football, and you'll see it in college football too, because they're one-and-done scenarios. So in my opinion, as a fan, the one-and-done scenarios are by far the most exciting, and they're the best to watch because any of these teams, we haven't ever seen it with the number 1 seeds yet, but any of these teams could be done one and done. Any of these teams that make it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it depends on which side of the fence you end up being on, right? So if you're a fan of a team where you're like, man, I know if we played this same Joker team 10 times, we'd win 8 of the 10 times. It just happened to be that we had that one and done format and we lost today, and that really sucks. But on the flip side, most likely, like what you just said, that underdog, that long shot, probably wouldn't win in a series. The only chance that they had was to be at their best on a certain day and for the other team not to bring their A game. So it does bring that kind of excitement. And year in, year out, we see upsets every single year. We see Cinderellas make it to the Sweet 16. We see Cinderellas now make it to even, the Final 8, Final 4. So that's what makes the NCAAs so darn exciting. And yeah, let's face it, being in Las Vegas is probably the best place to watch the games and be involved with all the energy than maybe to be at the game itself.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. I've been a couple times to Vegas on these few days, and it's just unbelievable. The energy, as you mentioned, and it's just the options that we have as consumers when you're in Vegas from a wagering standpoint. I mean, there are 16 games, so it's not like it's similar to, people like you and I who play the horse races a lot. There's always another opportunity to make a wager, which is nice. First half lines, second half lines. Maybe you're getting beat up in one of the games you played, but you can kind of tweak it and play the second half different, over unders. You can parlay the things, and you can, make your wagers on who's going to win the regional, Final Four teams, however you play. And on Thursday and Friday, we're just going to have a blast. We're going to be hanging out at the Treasure Island Sportsbook, and we're going to be bringing on any of you folks who are out in Vegas. We'd love for you to come on by. We'll bring you on for a minute. We'll pick your brain on maybe a bet or two, some of the games that you like, who are your Final Four teams, and we really look forward to having a fun weekend next weekend. And because for me, this whole next week, Mike, it's all college basketball now. That's what's nice. Like next week, our show is going to be all college basketball, and right now, our focus for after we're done with Eno in a minute, and we'll be talking some baseball with him. But once we bring Dan on, then for the next week, we're just tunnel vision with NCAA basketball.
So you've been to Vegas a couple times during the tourney. Let me ask you this: when you've been at a sports book or any of the viewing parties, do you think that we have always seen that there's going to be a loud cheer, especially towards the end of the game? There's a lot of intensity, especially a one-point game, free throw games, strategy, so on and so forth. Are there more fans of a specific team, for example, like a bunch of Michigan fans that are there, or UCLA fans that are there, or is it people that are yelling about their money?
Yeah, it's more the money, and honestly, a lot of the times it's the underdog teams will get the big cheers, But what's funny when you think about it from a logistics standpoint, the favorites are who the most people are wagering on. So most of the time, the teams that are the chalk are the teams who people are kind of groaning when they get beat. But I think it's just a little different in March Madness because the brackets too. So a lot of people are probably watching, maybe betting a few bucks in Vegas, but maybe they put their bracket in a big pool where they have a lot of money invested in their bracket. So maybe they're rooting for the underdog teams. You're just getting reaction after reaction after reaction. And it's not really for anyone, which I kind of like. I kind of enjoy the fact that it's spread out. You don't have like a bunch of UNLV fans there. I'm sure if UNLV gets in the tournament, you're going to have a home contingent, but there's not really like a home base team that everybody's going crazy for during the tournament because it's so spread out, because you have fans from 64 different teams, probably all represented in some way, shape, or form down there. So, you get just so much fun going on. But for me, Mike, the key is we got to get these Trojans at the tournament. We got to get them in there. They are just right on the outside looking in right now. Actually, I think after a couple losses yesterday, they're probably just still on the bubble. Looking right now, they're just about an 11 seed, the Trojans. But
and let's face it, that's a huge disappointment based on what the projections were.
They were number 8
season.
preseason. They were. You got to be honest. It's hard to compare conferences, I think, because what happens is you play some games before conference schedules start, and some teams, will do well, others won't, and then that's kind of okay. That's how every conference is based on what happened then. It's kind of funny because like a team like Arizona State, they beat Kansas State, Xavier. They had some good wins early on in the season, but they've struggled in conference. So now instead of saying that the Pac-12 is a tough conference, we think it's a garbage conference, which I got to be honest, it's not been very top heavy. Arizona was ranked number 1 to start the season. Arizona State was the last undefeated team, and they were ranked number 1. And then USC started the season off, and they were 4-0, and they were ranked number 8 in the nation. And those 3 teams could possibly be your 3 that make the tournament. UCLA is also right there, but it's just been from day one for the Trojans. As a fan, I got to be honest, it's just been a miserable, as bad as things could be season. First game of the year, DeAnthony Melton, who is projected to be a late first-round pick, was not playing. Nobody really knew why. And then there was an investigation going on. He gets cleared of any wrongdoing, yet he's still held out the whole season. I don't know what, for USC, as USC fans, that we know that we're kind of scared because of things that have happened with Reggie Bush, with OJ Mayo, with past sanctions. Every other team in college doesn't seem to matter. They're playing all their players that were investigated under claims and this and that. So it just kind of started bad right off the bat. And then Benny Boatwright got hurt, who was USC's leading scorer the last couple of years. So now you're down 2 of your top 3 players. Still no excuses, though, Mike. A lot of the games they lost, big leads that they blew late, and it didn't matter who was on the court. They were really just choking the games away down the stretch. So this is a team that's an 11 seed right now, probably somewhere like that. If they were to get into the tournament, they're going to have to win a game or 2 in the Pac-12 tourney. But this is a team that really can beat anyone. I don't think they're good enough to win 3 or 4 games in a row, but on a one-game perspective, with guys like Chimezie Metu, Jordan McLaughlin, both first-team All-Pac-12 players, they are good. They have a deep team of future pros. It's just been a bad year from top to bottom for my poor Trojans.
Shifting to another team in the same conference, I was glad to see that Miller was able to continue with U of A. I always feel bad for the kids anytime that there's some type of scandal that involves their coach that doesn't involve the players themselves. It looks like he's been cleared, I think. I was surprised at how quickly they were able to kind of get through that issue and allow him to continue.
That's what I didn't understand, is how quick everything went. It was just boom, boom, and then they're back. They also had Alonzo Trier, another player on Arizona, who was suspended, something to do with performance-enhancing substances. And so Trier and Ayton both get cleared. And me, as a USC fan, I'm kind of scratching my head a little frustrated going, how did these guys get cleared after one day and they're playing? USC has a player that got cleared, and they still decided not to play him in DeAnthony Melton. That was a little frustrating from a fan perspective, but this is the bigger problem, Mike, is that we all know what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. There just has to be a better way for these players to get some monetary compensation, in particular the NCAA football, NCAA basketball, really the players that are earning a lot of money and that are creating lots of revenue for their universities. I mean, there has to be some way, shape, or form, whether it be a future payment or future something. It just has to be better than this, because we all know what's going on. And now it's got to the point where Arizona and Sean Miller and a lot of these schools just said, we don't care anymore, NCAA. We're going to call you on your bluff. Come and get us, because we're just going to keep everybody playing until you do something about it.
Well, what cracks me up is, the NFL and the NBA in particular, they're sitting pretty when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? Because they're just sitting back, plucking away the best talent. It's basically a free minor league system for them. They don't have to spend a penny on it. Look at how many farm teams each major league club has. Look at their scouting departments. They've got to scour through not just D1, D2, D3, NAIA, but also high schools, JUCOs. They got to cover the entire nation. Plus, let's not forget, all of Latin America, all of Asia. They got to scout the world and develop the players in a minor league system. All in while the NBA and the NFL just sit back, pluck talent year after year, and keep their mouths shut. Let's restrict somebody and make him go to college for 1 year before we draft him. I mean, give me a break. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous system.
I mean, it doesn't in any other situation or scenario, when you're good. I mean, think about it from if you're a singer or if you're an actor or if you're a genius engineer and a company wants to hire you when you're 18 and pay you millions of dollars, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. You're not going to go to school for 1 year if you've already been educated or if you're already set for what your field will be. Right. And I like what you said. It hurts both with the 1 year, the one and done type thing too. It really does. Because then you have kids in college that really don't want to be there very much, or maybe don't even really need to be there. Some do, some don't. But I think the NBA teams and organizations, what it does is it kind of gives them a little bit more responsibility. Kind of puts them in a little bit more of what you just said, kind of a scouting spot where it's like, okay, now you're going to have to take your chances on kids that we have really only high school film on. Not another year of college film. Kids that you might not know as well, you might not have seen develop again, might hurt your organization a little bit more. You're going to have to be sharper, but you are going to get someone young, at 18, and you're going to have their rights, and you're going to be able to kind of mold them and shape them how you want.
Yeah, exactly right. And, that's really what it's all about, is molding them, shaping them, as you want. I want to go back to a point that you made, though. And when you're in any other profession, you could jump into, the quote unquote bigs at any point in time. You could be offered a contract. That's also why I like that baseball drafts high schoolers.
Yeah. So as we kind of get set for our continued NCAA college basketball conversation, one website that I just kind of love to mention for everyone who's kind of a dorky bracket fan like me and is curious as to where everybody's kind of seating and where they're moving up and down the ranks, it's bracketmatrix.com. So, and this is a website that we're going to kind of use when we talk with Dan in a little bit. What it does is it averages basically all of the brackets that are out there, and it gives you an idea of where the teams are standing in the seedings right now. So you kind of get a good idea of where every team sits in the brackets. And so, right, as we mentioned before, like me as a USC fan, I see them right now. They have a 10.51 average, and they're sitting at like the top of the 11 seed. So they need a win or two in the next couple games to hopefully get out of that play-in scenario.
Yeah, it's a great site, and I didn't know about it until you turned me onto it. And I'm interested to hear if Keeneland Dan utilizes that site or not. Although I suspect he's kind of an encyclopedia in of himself. And
yeah, he's a machine.
Yeah, and he comes up with his own projections and that type of thing. It'll be interesting to compare what he's come up with in comparison to what the numbers show on average of all these other media sites and things of that nature. We've got a couple minutes before commercial break, and we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna shift to college basketball for the second half of the show and all of next week. Are you getting into baseball mode yet?
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Do you watch any spring training games?
Of course.
Now,
yeah.
you
Well, the only thing that
to
stinks
end?
is that a lot of this week, the last couple Dodger games haven't been on TV, which is kind of head scratching. Even though I have access LA, the Dodgers channel, but the next few nights they are going to be on, and more than anything, I'm paying attention. Just kind of the injuries are the big things that I pay attention to early on. As long as everybody's kind of playing, I could care less what their numbers and stats look like. To be honest. I just wanted to see from a health standpoint and like who's playing. Because for me, I got a fantasy baseball draft coming up in about a week and a half. So I'm locking down now, and I'm really starting to see who's going to be where. And Dodgers. For me, I'm always got the Dodger goggles on. So one thing I want to kind of talk to you about when we come back from the break is I want to go over our teams a little bit. The Dodgers, who didn't do a whole lot in the offseason, but they may not really have had to. They had a good year last year, but as a fan, I'm a little tentative on the Dodgers season coming up this year. And then I want to pick your brain a little bit on the big J.D. Martinez move and the Red Sox, because what it looks like right now, Mike, if we're just going off of win totals in the NBA and in the MLB and the projections, we really look like we have a top tier of like 6 teams and then everybody else. The Astros, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Indians, the Cubs, the Nationals, and the Red Sox, from as far as projections are concerned, they're all up above 90 wins. And then after that group, it goes down to like the Diamondbacks, Cardinals, Brewers, and Angels, and they're about 5 or 6 wins lower than everyone else. So it really does look like we're going to have a top tier of pretty chalky teams this year. And when we come back from the break, I want to ask you, are all of those teams going to win their division? Are we going to have 6 favorites win the divisions in the MLB this year?
I'm going to tell you no. And after the commercial break, I'll tell you who could penetrate through that, who are some of the surprise picks, and teams from that part of the mid pack that can maybe make a run, especially if they could bolster their clubs with a trade at the trade deadline. Let's talk about that after this very first commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few short moments.
Think you've seen everything there is to see in online television? Let us surprise you. Visit voiceamerica.tv today for sports, health, business, and more on demand 24/7.
If you're looking for more information on firearms and the shooting sports, check out Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan. Kelly is the owner of McMillan Fiberglass Stocks with over 40 years of experience. Now he's ready to share some industry luminaries and their perspectives with you. If you're interested in firearms, whether it be for shooting, for fun, competition, hunting, or self-defense, Kelly is here to share his wisdom and experience. Listen live for Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan, Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Are you ready for the latest sports news, the culture around the game, and unique insight? Then you need to make Kareem and the Coach your destination each week. Host Kareem Rush played for the LA Lakers and has the inside track to personas in both professional and college sports. Co-host Eric Newman is a former basketball coach and now a producer and filmmaker. Together they cover sports and entertainment in a fast-paced hour every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and 2 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Sports continues to grow and evolve to ever-increasing prominence in today's society. On All Around Sports, host John Inglesby will connect with the leading newsmakers from the sports world, including players, owners, and fellow sports journalists, discussing the top news and events that are relevant to sports today. John will also report from and offer his experience of the world's top sports events. Tune in to All Around Sports with John Inglesby on Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Mike and Gino here talking some college basketball and baseball. We are still efforting to get our very first guest, who is Eno Sarris of the Athletic MLB. Great writer, very interesting guy. He covers the analytics side of baseball for the Athletic. He's done so also for ESPN and Fox and Fangraphs and
He's a great follow. Let me say, because I was looking through his Twitter last night when I was just getting some questions ready to ask him. And not only is he a good writer and he'll give you great information himself, but he's one of those guys that will share and retweet and kind of put out really good articles and really good information from other people. I mean, last night I was reading a Fangraph story that he put out about Billy Hamilton. It's a great story, Mike. Billy Hamilton, the leadoff hitter for the Reds. There was a writer who went into the clubhouse and had this new idea, a new analytics idea, basically saying, hey, since you're so fast, you're the fastest player in the majors, but your issue, one of your struggles is getting on base. He has a tough time hitting the ball. You know, he's a good fielder and he's unbelievably fast, but he struggles getting on base. And his idea was maybe to use him like a super sub. Basically, don't start the game. But then when you have someone on base, that's when you put Billy Hamilton in. Maybe it's the third inning, maybe it's the fourth inning. You put him in, he's automatically on first. They did the math, and if that were to be the case, they could get him on base 100 more times this year than last year. And they would be able to score something like 20 more runs.
So the assumption is you put him on first, he ends up on third within 2 or 3 pitches.
The assumption is he's automatically on second.
So definitely on second, maybe on third.
And now you're in scoring position. He's the type of guy that could steal third again. And what they were even saying would be, now what you could do is maybe in the first inning, right off the bat, you put one of your best hitters that's maybe not a good fielder or maybe not someone that would play the rest of the game. You get that guy in at bat. Now you get one of your best hitters in at bat right away. And if he gets on base, all of a sudden, you just use the best of both worlds. You use one of your best hitters' ability to get on base, and now you got your fastest player who is able to score. There was something like he scored 44% of the time he got on base last year, which was almost double everyone else on the Reds.
Okay, so what do you do when it's so? Is it the first guy that gets on base? Like, let's say it's Joey Votto.
No. He said if it's not Joey Votto or a pitcher.
Okay.
Because he had a higher WAR than basically everybody else on the team besides Joey Votto, and and pitching wise, you can't take a pitcher out necessarily that early in the game. But they were saying that his impact would be more, and if you get that run, and it was kind of funny because the story that I was reading, you hear like other players from that are in the clubhouse are kind of listening and coming up, and they're kind of chiming in like, oh, wait, this would be kind of cool. You'd automatically, they're kind of piggybacking on the idea, but Billy Hamilton doesn't like the idea because he wants to start. And
well, you know what? Let's ask Eno about that thought, because that's a really interesting idea. I'd love to hear it from him straight out of his mouth. Let's bring in our first guest, and that is Eno Sarris. Like I said before, he's written for Fangraphs, ESPN, Fox, MLB.com, SB Nation, many others. Currently, he's the analytics writer at The Athletic MLB. We're talking about none other than Eno Sarris. Good afternoon, Eno. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing good. Sorry I'm a little late. I got tied up in a conversation with Chris Dickerson, former MLBer, about VR and how virtual reality is the next new training technique, and how players are going to be able to step in against the starting pitcher that night and take some virtual swings before they ever step into the box for real. So,
wow, that's really interesting.
So really into it, and I'm here now, though.
No, that's actually fascinating. So you're on with Mike and Gino. We're talking to Eno Sarris of The Athletic MLB, joining us straight from the ballpark, I think. Which game are you visiting today?
I'm here in Maryvale to see the Brewers play. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody.
That tells me how many games you're at, constantly moving.
Yeah. Who have you got to spend?
Baseball, the outcome won't matter.
Yep.
Yeah. Who have you got to spend some of the most time with as far as teams? Have you kind of ended up around a few teams more than others? And if so, kind of what are the buzz with some of those teams you spent a lot of time with so far?
Well, I stepped in for my man Andrew Baggerly, who does the beat for San Francisco for The Athletic, and he needed a day off, so I stepped in yesterday and talked to Jeff Samardzija about his new curveball grip and
the spin rate.
Just checked it out. Talked spin rate. He talked about harnessing his spin better, and that his new grip would have a spin axis that mimicked his four seam better. So coming out of the hand, it would look more like his four seam. So he changed his grip in order to do that. That was fun. The Giants being in the Giants yesterday and Brewers today is very different, because the Giants are veteran. They run through their drills without a lot of hoopla and without a lot of yelling, just, quiet, professional sort of vibe. Out here today in Maryvale for the Brewers, they were playing soccer for one of their drills. They turned one of their throwing drills into this competition. They were yelling about who was winning and who was losing. There was a lot of yelling and music, and it's just two slightly different teams. I think they're both interesting, because the Brewers are going for it with a young squad, and they're doing a little bit more like the Astros and Cubs did it, developing a young core and trying to build around it. Whereas the Giants are trying to hold on to an older core, and they went and got older players at a time when nobody wants older players. So both camps are pretty interesting.
That's really interesting.
I have to ask him, though, Mike, first and foremost, because I'm a Dodger fan, so you were talking Giants, and the Giants should be a little bit better this year, and maybe a couple of the teams in the West take a little bit of a step back. Arizona was pretty good last year, and Colorado, they might have overachieved a little bit early on in the season. But from a Dodgers perspective, what's your kind of overall feeling on the team? Because I look at this team, we got big contributions last year from Taylor, Bellinger, and Puig. I wonder, are we going to get those kind of contributions again from them? Feels like we know what we're getting from Turner, but now Seager, what's up with his injury? I know he's going to maybe play the field next week. A lot of guys really overachieved for a team that's deep but doesn't have a ton of, stars offensively, I think. How do you see this team coming back this year? Because I'm a little bit nervous after the World Series hangover heading into the season.
I could see that. What they're doing is kind of almost what the Cardinals have done, is build a team with no holes and a lot of depth. And I think the genius of the Dodgers is they're combining a team with no holes and a lot of depth with the resources to go and get stars. So, Clayton Kershaw's a star for me.
Yeah.
On the offensive side, I see, some potential for regression, but I also believe in those three players, in Puig and Taylor and Bellinger. So I don't think that it'll be too bad. And if somebody gets hurt, they've got lots of minor league talent, lots of veteran talent. They'll stash on the DL. They've proven they'll do that. So they found ways to inject their team with a lot of depth. I think they'll be a juggernaut again. I think they even kept some resources in the tank so that in the in-season they can go and get somebody again.
Okay, thank you. You make me feel a lot better already, Eno. Thank you. Okay.
Hey, we were talking about specific teams, with the Giants and Dodgers. Let's take a step back and talk generalities for a moment. You're the guru in terms of analytics, and for so many listeners out there, they've heard the term many times. So in your words, what are analytics, and where does sabermetrics fall into that category?
Yeah, I actually prefer analytics a little bit more than sabermetrics, because I think sabermetrics, people think of just raw numbers, Excel spreadsheets. And for me, analytics are actually just deep dives. And so sometimes it can be mechanics. Sometimes it can be strategy. Sometimes, usually informed by numbers in some way. It has to come back to projections and how important is this? What do the numbers say how important this is? But analytics, I think, can be a sort of larger way of looking at things. But, sometimes it manifests in the weirdest ways. Them playing soccer here today, that's in a way probably informed by analytics. What they find is that a loose team plays better, and that playing other sports is a good way to activate muscles you don't use all the time in baseball, and to maybe improve your footwork, and to do something athletic in a game format, so that they are actually running instead of, when you see them jogging around, a lot of times you just see them going through the motions. This is, by making it soccer, we're gonna get you more involved. And I'm sure they have, research that's proven that this is a good idea. So analytics can be, kicking the soccer ball around. It's not necessarily just, what comes out of a spreadsheet.
So are you saying that somehow it, numerically, or assigns a value to try to, basically come up with a number for chemistry? Team chemistry?
That would be analytics. And I think there probably is a way. People have tried. Sam Miller had a great piece on that. I don't think, anybody who studies baseball, I think that it's almost like a scientist. I've heard a scientist say, I don't know that I have an explanation, but I know that the explanation is out there. So I think it would be silly to say chemistry doesn't exist. I don't think a serious researcher would say that. I think they would say chemistry is something we haven't been able to put a number on. But if you can help me design a way to think about this, or design a study, I'll do it. It's just,
sure.
It's not an easy one to study, because, people mix with people very differently. Like Eric Hosmer might have been perfect in Kansas City, where he grew up with all those players. All those players came up through the system with him. They developed all together, and they probably had crazy nights out and, just lots of fun. And he was like the guy who also mixed it with working hard. So they're all like, oh, this guy's super fun and he works hard. And so that makes him a leader, right? Well, what if he comes to San Diego and maybe he doesn't like one guy and he doesn't have any history with them and he hasn't partied with them, and they're like, who's this guy? He made $140 million. I don't know if I like him. So, every situation is different. Everybody's personalities interact differently. And so I would say that chemistry is a hard thing to put a number on. And so therefore, maybe we shouldn't value it too highly until we know how much to value it.
That's really interesting that you say that, because it seems like certain GMs do their research, do their homework, dig in a little bit further and figure out who are the type of guys that could mesh. And it seems like every move they make turns to gold. And then there are other teams, they'll bring in free agents or try to assemble a team, and they just don't construct it the right way. So it'll be interesting to see how to find out how many of those guys, have an in-house formula, perhaps. They've got their own statisticians and analytics team to be able to create that. But speaking of front offices, I want to ask you, is there a fine balance between the old school mentality? Let's just say like the Jim Leland, the Tommy Lasorda, the Tony La Russa, the Lou Piniella, or even some of the current managers that are old school like Bochy and Scioscia, with today's modern day, really young general manager? Is there some kind of balance where you need to have an old school baseball mentality to be able to pick out talent and then somebody who's got expertise with the numbers?
For sure. Actually, I think that interaction is probably one of the most crucial to team success, and also the hardest to be prescriptive about, because I think that maybe the most important role for a coach or for a manager, basically, for me, is managing personalities. And different clubhouses need different voices. And I think you can almost just sort of basically kind of put people into like the yeller package, the intense yeller kind of manager, versus the kind of more relaxed players coach type manager. And I think there have been a lot of archetypes for both. And if you just look at the career of Joe Torre was more of a relaxed player type manager. In one situation, he didn't win that much. He comes to the Yankees with a bunch of veterans at the right time. They're all professionals, and he's just the perfect voice for the Yankees at that time. So, I think that's why we see managers sort of move in and out as teams get older and teams find their identity, because they're trying to find the perfect manager for that group of players at that time. It's not, there is no perfect manager with a capital P and a capital M,
Could that be Aaron Boone?
Yeah, I mean, for the Phillies, I think it's really interesting to bring Gabe Kapler in, because he's very intense. And it may be perfect for like a young group of, intense young professionals to come in and just be like, we're all just going to, be like 100% all the time. We're just going to really try hard. Or it might rub them the wrong way, and they're like, why is this guy so intense when we just want to chill out and play some baseball? So, you never know how it will work. And I don't think it'll necessarily be because if he fails, I don't think it'll be because he's into numbers or he's friendly to stats. I think that's everybody, even Bochy, everybody is looking at the stats and trying to play the matchups. If he fails, it's because there's probably some sort of personality clash at some level with some of the players.
Question. It looks, just from looking at like win totals and projections and stuff, curious if yours differ at all. It looks like it's going to be a pretty formful season, at least in the National League in particular. I mean, there are 6 teams that are projected to win like 5 or 6 more games than the rest of the group. The Astros, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Indians, the Cubs, the Nationals, and then you have the Red Sox as kind of the top wild card team as far as projections are concerned. Who of those teams do you think maybe come back to life? Are there any of those teams that you think don't win their divisions or we don't see in the playoffs? Because I'm looking at those squads, and they're going to be pretty tough to get by.
Yeah, I think above when it comes to the top squads, depth is going to be a big question mark. I think that the Astros and Dodgers have built in a lot of depth. If you look at their starting pitchers in particular, you go 7, 8, 9 deep before you kind of start shaking your head a little bit. Whereas I think with the Yankees, maybe they have less depth. I'm not as sure about their 7th, 8th, and 9th type starters. I don't even really know who they are. So, if the Yankees run the table and everyone's healthy, they are decently young, then they're going to be a great team, and they could be a threat to win it all. But I do look at the Yankees and say, Stanton goes down with a hammy. What happens if Luis Severino has something go barking? All of a sudden, this team looks a little different.
We've got about a minute before we have to get to our next commercial break, and we'll have to hopefully bring you back on in a future date to talk a little bit more specifics. But do Judge and Stanton hit 90 home runs between them?
In a full healthy year, yeah, I could see them hitting. I mean, I would say the over-under is probably somewhere around 85, 90. Yeah, I mean, the park there is going to help Stanton a little bit. Maybe not a lot. Maybe not, give him 20 more, but it's going to help him. And Judge is only getting older, and you see some real adjustments from him. He's had times where you see maturity, and you see him he had some struggles last year, and he kind of righted the ship. And I like to see that. That means to me that he's going to be a dynamic hitter, and he's not going to be defined by his strikeouts, I don't think. I think he's going to be like Stanton, where he improved his strikeout rate every year he was in the major leagues, basically. So I think that's going to be the duo offensively in baseball this year.
Most important question to close it out, give me a good beer that I need to drink right now. I know you're a beer connoisseur. Well, what's something that you're into right now?
Well, you guys are based in Philly, right?
No, we're in LA. We're in LA. We're in California. So yeah,
in LA.
Yeah.
All right. Los Angeles, huh? I mean, you've got Monkish down there. Beechwood is amazing. But I have this personal favorite that people don't talk about as much. El Segundo, I think, just makes really, really good IPAs. And you'll see them around in LA. You'll see them in the fridge, I think. El Segundo is my pick.
Okay, we're gonna go get a 6-packer of those, Mikey.
That sounds really good. Can we invite you back maybe a couple weeks into the season and talk about how the numbers are shaking out so far?
For sure, I'd love to come back on.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. If you want to, as we send you off here, maybe give the listeners a way they could follow you and read your material.
Yeah, easiest spot is Twitter or Facebook, actually, Eno Sarris. That's the easiest way to find me.
Outstanding. Good stuff, Enjoy the ball game, and we will circle up with you in a few weeks.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, my man. Appreciate it. That was Eno Sarris of the Athletic MLB. Good stuff there. We're going to take a commercial break and then wrap this up with full college basketball coverage with Keeneland Dan. See you in a moment.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Okay, sports fans, here's your opportunity to discuss football, America's favorite sport. On an annual basis, millions of people attend, watch, and listen to football, both pro and college. Ray Ellis Sports, an internet talk radio show, was developed with the fan in mind. Join host, former Philadelphia Eagles and Cleveland Browns strong safety Ray Ellis on Voice America Sports every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for exciting, interactive football discussions from the fans' perspective. Tune in every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to Ray Ellis Sports right here on the Voice America Network, and let's talk football.
This week on The Revolution with Jim and Trav, we're talking pig pursuits. With few season restrictions, generous bag limits, and plenty of opportunities, hunters never tire of burning some bacon. Joining us is Fred Eichler of Predator Nation, Hal Schaefer from Greg Zipadelli's Drop Zone, and Jerry Courtney, VP of Marketing for Ranch Hand. It's presented by Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, World Fishing Network, and My Outdoor TV. Friday afternoons at 1 Pacific Time on the Voice America Sports Channel.
Get ready for the Get Down with Hurley Brown. Want to get inside of the minds of the players and coaches? We'll talk everything sports, but with a focus on the NFL, NBA, and college football. We'll review and preview the week's big games. We'll talk about the draft choices and free agents, and go inside the teams for news, recruiting, and what's next from the colleges to the pro teams. It's the Get Down with Hurley Brown. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific on Voice America Sports.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
This is the Mike Abadir Show. If you want to call in today, we can be reached at 1-888-346-9144. That's 1-888-346-9144. Or send an email to mike@themikeabadirshow.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Mike and Gino here, sitting back talking about college basketball with Keeneland Dan, who is our next guest, and hopefully he's going to give us some tips for our Vegas road show so that we can maybe hit a couple parlays or something like that. Gino, let's bring in our first guest. It is Keeneland Dan with Fat Bald Guy Racing. Dan, how are you?
Good. Ready for all these games this weekend. Should be a fun couple of weeks, shouldn't it? Bunch of games to watch and try to figure out, who the side you should be on.
And you're a hardcore Cincy fan, as your brother Mick is the coach of Cincinnati, and they have had an incredible year. Right now, they're looking like a pretty solid 2. We'll talk about Cincy for a second, and then we'll kind of jump into everyone else. But I'd imagine as a fan, you have to be extremely happy with what they've done this year. Mick's got to be really happy. They've done a great job, and they look like right now they're probably, I think, they have maybe the 4th 2 seed in right now, but only room to move up. And if a couple of these teams in front of them lose, then they could be a really strong, steady 2.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well set that they're going to be the 2 in the South, and unless somehow SMU would upset Cincinnati tomorrow, I think it's pretty well set that it's going to be the 2 in the South. Virginia's going to be the 1. Who the 3 is going to be is still up for debate, I'd guess, but I think it's either going to be Tennessee, Auburn, Michigan State, or Michigan. It's going to be one of those 4 that you would get in the Sweet 16. But, in the second round, they're probably looking at a middle-of-the-road Big East team or a Big 12 team, and that's not going to be easy. Those teams are seasoned. They've played in really tough conferences, so, you can't just say you're going to be in the Sweet 16 because you're a 2 seed, but, the year's been so incredible, and we all know this. If you don't have NBA-level players, it's so hard to advance in the tournament. It just is. And finally, we've got for sure one, and Jacob Evans is an NBA player, and a couple of the other guys will make money playing basketball. I don't know if they'll make the NBA, but they'll play in Europe. Kyle Washington's going to play pro ball somewhere, and Gary Clark will play somewhere, and eventually Kane Broom will play somewhere. So, there's some professional level players on this team and that's really the first time Mick's had that in a long time.
I'm looking at bracketmatrix.com. It's one of the websites I kind of use when I'm getting an idea of how all the pundits see it. It's a good one. It averages everything out. So let's kind of roll through a little bit. They say Virginia, Villanova, Xavier, and Kansas at the 1s, and then Duke, Purdue, North Carolina, Cincinnati in the 2s. Then we have Auburn, Michigan State, Tennessee, Michigan through the 3s. So that's basically the top 12 or so that they have right now. Of those teams or those groups, anyone jump out at you as a team that you think is a little overrated or a team that you think will be for sure in your Final Four?
Well, I think Duke has the most talent in the country, and I think the committee's sitting in there right now trying every way possible to give them a 1 seed. And I think soon as
like always
gets beat, yeah, like always. It just is what it is. But whether you believe in conspiracies or you just think that, anybody that watches Duke knows they've probably got the best players in the country. So, the fact that they're probably going to end up a 1 seed, unless they would get upset in the ACC tournament, if they get to the finals, I think they'll give them the 1 over Kansas, because with Kansas without their big guy, they're probably going to lose to Oklahoma State or lose the next game. So I don't know how Kansas can hold that number 1 seed. I've never thought all along they should have been 1. If you made me, pick which 1 seed would you like to play, it would be Kansas. It's because they're not a typical Kansas team. They've only got 1 big guy. He's nursing a bad knee. He's not going to play in this tournament. So, he's going to be on a couple-week rest into the NCAA. Their guards are good. But, normally with Kansas, we'd all look and say, okay, this guy's an NBA player, this guy's an NBA player. They got 2, 3, 4 NBA players. When I look at this roster, name me the guy that's a sure shot 8 to 10-year NBA player. I'm not sure they have one.
That's a really interesting point.
Solid college team, but they do not have NBA, level players. So I think they're a little bit overrated. There's no way I would take Kansas over Duke if they played, or if I was in that room, I would just say, guys, this team's got 4 NBA players. This team's got 0. They got comparable records. I don't know how you could possibly put Kansas over Duke, but that's just my opinion there. And then, I talked with you off the air just a second about Auburn. A lot of people don't understand. They lost their big man a couple games ago. He was their rim protector, their shot blocker. They're a different team now. So, if I'm Cincinnati as the 2, I'm praying for Auburn to be the 3. That would be your easiest bracket to get through. Now, obviously, you still got to beat them. They got very high-quality guards, but, they don't have anybody to guard the rim anymore. So, yes, they won the SEC regular season, but I'm not sure they're the best team now without that kid. So that would be another team I would keep my eye on that I would be betting against if I got any kind of odds in a decent little bracket there with Auburn, I'm not sure they'll even get to the Sweet 16.
Dan, let me piggyback on that thought. When you're talking about teams with talent and the number of guys that they have that could project to be NBA guys and things of that nature, I think one component to advancing and making a far run, deep run into the tournament is talent. The other factor is usually going to be matchups. And I've found that in the years past, teams that are kind of a one-trick pony, are the ones that are most likely to get upset by, like the Princetons of the past and teams like that. Which are the teams that are more adept to handle different schemes? I guess the team that's maybe the most versatile that can win the race, taking the lead and can sit back off the lead, if you will, and be able to make a run.
Yeah, I think Villanova, Virginia, Michigan, Cincinnati, all four of those teams can win in different ways. They don't have to score 80 to win, and they can also hold you to 55 if they have to. Purdue's a little bit like that, but they've struggled a little bit down the stretch, and I'm just not sure how good the Big Ten was this year. That league was really, really down, so I'm not sure how far they can advance. North Carolina's another one. I mean, they've got some young NBA players that are just not ready yet. They've got a senior leader at point guard. They got a real quality in May. They got the star that can put them on their back. And when they come to play defense, which they can do when they try, they just don't always try. North Carolina is another one that could be there. And I'll tell you the sleeper, and I'm hoping we don't play him again on Sunday. Wichita State, guys, is really, really good. They go 8 or 9 deep. They got a great coach. They got size. They got that moose in the middle, Morris, that can really score. They got an NBA point guard in Shamet. I mean, that team, if I'm a 1 seed, I don't want to see Wichita State as the 4. That I would be cringing. And I just said that to my Xavier buddies at lunch today. They were all bragging about, they're going to get a 1 seed, and they will. But if Xavier's one of those teams that they're the one-trick pony, they can only win one way, outscore you. They're trying to beat everybody 90 to 85, 85 to 80, and they've won about 10 games this year in the last minute of the game. They've won every one of them. Every game that's went to the buzzer, they've won every one of them. But in the tournament, when it's 80 to 80, and you're the favorite, you start cringing a little, right? You're not the Cinderella anymore like there used to be, and they're the 1 seed, not the 11 seed. All of a sudden, it's a little bit more nerve-wracking for those kids to be the one that's supposed to win instead of the team that's supposed to upset. And a lot of times you don't play as free and easy in the tournament, when you're the favorite. A couple of years ago, they were a 2 seed. They got beat in the second round by Wisconsin. It was a 7 seed. But then they're an 11 seed. Last year, they go to the Elite 8, playing free and easy. I look for, and I hate to say this because I do root for Xavier, but I think they're really susceptible in the second to third round. Get a team like a Wichita State or a Texas Tech that got seniors that can come at you in waves and can score. And I'm not sure Xavier wants to sit down and guard anybody. So that's the team that I would say of all the 1s and all the 2s that I think might get ousted early.
Dan, we got about 3 minutes before we close. We are on with Keeneland, Dan, Fat Bald Guy Racing, checking them out. Dan, we are here on the West Coast. We're in LA, Gino and I. And obviously, any West Coaster is always going to be a little bit sensitive about the East Coast bias and so on and so forth. Oh, yeah. So we're hoping that we could find a West Coast team that could make a run. Unfortunately, this year it looks like the best teams are Arizona, Gonzaga, and maybe Nevada, Reno from out west. And outside of that, do any of those 3 even have a chance to be able to win the title?
Arizona does because they've got the freak. And, if Aiden comes to play and plays hard for 35 to 36 minutes, he's on the floor, he can be absolutely dominating. I don't know about all the craziness around that program right now, if they can concentrate and buckle down in that locker room, us against the world, and rally. But they've got the talent to win the whole thing. There's no doubt Arizona's got the talent.
Dan, let me go quick hitters with you. I'm going to give you a team, and these are bubble teams, and you let me know, do you think this team is in or out as of right now? Baylor.
Okay. Baylor is out.
Bama, who is actually playing right now.
They need a miracle. If they get to the SEC finals, they might but that would be their 15th loss. I don't see any way they get in with 15 losses.
Arizona State.
I think they're going to be in the play-in game in Dayton.
Wouldn't it be great to get Arizona State, Oklahoma? I think that should be a play-in game with those two teams.
I think it might be. I really believe it might be.
Two teams with good success early on in the season that have struggled late. What about out here in the West, USC and UCLA?
I think they both squeak in. I think UCLA is probably just a little bit safer, but I think they both get in. They're probably going to both be dangerous 10, 11 seeds. Because UCLA's got talent, man.
And they got some good wins.
They're just, that whole season's been a blow-up with all the craziness that went on. But both teams are pretty good. They can win a game or two.
And then Providence is another one that always seems to be right around the bubble and in the play-in.
Yeah. Providence, Coach Cooley might be the luckiest coach in America, other than, you're right, that the Big East broke up.
Well, Dan, I'm sorry. I was going to say we're up against it. We're about to close the show here. Can we bring you back to join us, during the tourney and break down some of the matchups?
Yeah, like 2 weeks.
Absolutely,
We'll come back
anytime.
When we're down into the Elite Eight. We'll talk and we'll also pick your brain on some 3-year-olds in horse racing. We'll kind of see who you like heading into the Derby preps in the Derby.
Well, I can tell you this: if Bolt the Oro wins this weekend, I will lose every dollar in my pocket. I'll give you a tip of what I think of Bolt the Oro.
We're going against the Bolt this weekend. Keeneland Dan, you can find him on Twitter. Keeneland Dan. You can also find his really good information with horse racing. He's at Fat Bald Guy Racing, at Fat Bald Guy Racing, fatbaldguyracing.com for all the horse racing stuff. But he's on Twitter, Keeneland Dan, at Fat Bald Guy Racing. And you love to interact with the people. You're always talking college basketball, and we really appreciate having you on, Dan. You are as sharp as they come when it's talking NCAA tourney.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you joining us.
Anybody about basketball, horses only, no politics, right?
Let's do it, my friend.
Awesome.
Well, we thank Dan for joining us, and we hope to see you all in Las Vegas next week at the Treasure Island. And
we'll promote it all week. We'll keep reminding you on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram and everything.
And if you can't make it, please listen in. We will see you guys next Thursday live from Las Vegas. Have a great sports weekend, everyone.
Thanks for joining us this week for the Mike Abadir Show. Please tune in again next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 11 a.m. Pacific Time for another show with Mike and his co-host, Gino Bacola, on the Voice America Sports Channel. Have a great week.